Welcome to the webinar on IPA Toolbox in collaboration with WAIPA and GIZ. I would like to start with a legal notification. This webinar is being recorded and the names of the participants is not going to be visible. If you feel still uncomfortable, you may leave now. And the good news is the speakers and the presenters are not going to leave. They will be with us until the end of this webinar. We have close to 500 registrations for this webinar, so we have a pretty large group. I would like to welcome you all on behalf of GIZ and WAIPA. And I hope you all are safe and in good health. As you all know, COVID-19 has deeply impacted our lives in health-wise as well as economically. And good news is the vaccines are being developed every day. Another notification is coming up. And WAIPA and GIZ also joined forces to develop another vaccine, but this vaccine is for your business. IPA Toolbox provides practical guidance, actually, for IPAs. So this webinar is to launch this toolbox and to explain how this can be used. We have 3 speakers. We are going to start with welcome and updates from the CEO of WAIPA, Boštjan Skalar. He has been working as a diplomat. He has been working in the private sector priorly, and he was the head of an IPA. And secondly, Stefan Felix will then present the work of GIZ with investment promotion agencies and talk about why GIZ decided to commission this toolbox. Stefan is an advisor to private sector development at the GIZ. And finally, most importantly, Björn Bogler will then introduce the IPA toolbox and give you some insights on how to use it. Björn is a consultant who was commissioned to develop the IPA toolbox that we are launching today. He has 25 years experience on international consulting. His technical expertise in the areas of investment promotion as well as industrial cluster development. Let's look at the agenda in a nutshell. We will start, as I said, with the welcome and updates from Boštjan. We will continue with Stefan about the GIZ work with the IPAs. We will continue with the IPA toolbox with Björn Vogler, and we will continue with the panel discussion and the Q&A, and we will wrap up with the satisfaction survey. And I will try to be today's moderator and help you for the moderation as well as the Q&A session. And some quick guidelines. You can easily ask questions through the chat box function. We will try to accept as many questions as we can. And we will collect these questions and ask to our participants and our presenters in the end. Finally, we will have, of course, a satisfaction survey in the end of this webinar. We hope you will all clicking on very satisfied button. Let's see what we are going to have. And I'm going to slowly hand over to Boštjan, not without taking too much of your time. Boštjan, can you hear us? Are you there with us still? You haven't left, yes. I hope.
Everything works fine. Thank you very much, Ismail, for an excellent introduction.
Thank you, Boštjan. I am not going to interrupt the flow, and you can, once you are finished, please hand over to Stefan. And Stefan, please feel free to hand over to Björn accordingly, in order not me to show up again and again and take your precious time. Over to you, Boštjan.
Thank you so much, Ismail, again. And really, I would first like to thank to GIZ that our cooperation was really excellent and smooth, and this is exactly what we need in these difficult times, that we focus on the positive things, as Ismail said, and bringing like some certain business vaccine to try to assist to FDI community. I would say, as we are a WAIPA like an umbrella organization of IPAs, especially for the IPAs, of course, we are very glad that this toolbox will be available for all IPAs, and they will be able to use that modules and try to learn from different perspectives throughout the whole FDI cycle. So to be brief, not to take so much of the time, because what we of course would like to hear is from the Björn how the toolbox works, and he will present it more in details for your, let's say, reference. So let me say a couple of words of WAIPA. And WAIPA was established in 1995 as, let's say, the department of the UNCTAD, so in the auspices of UNCTAD. So it means that we are over 25 years now in the field on the investment promotion, and we have an extensive number of IPAs from all around the world, so we are a global institution. we try to serve as a platform, of course, to the members and provide them the opportunity to network, exchange best practices in investment promotion, and currently more or less even more in the investment facilitation, or if I may say aftercare, trying to mitigate the risks to the existing investors. So the exchange of best practices is one of the main things that we try to promote and support. As well, promote and develop understanding and cooperation among the IPAs. Many times we hear that IPAs are competitors. It's up to some level true, but we always believe that cooperation among IPAs, especially in these difficult times, becomes more and more important. And what we see currently is that the IPAs are connecting in the regional levels, trying to show to investors that their region, comparing to other regions, is stable, strong. It's, let's say, working together, hand in hand, helping to each other. There are some good examples of the cross-border common projects that the IPAs are cooperating together. And of course, the purpose of us, of WAIPA, is to provide the technical assistance and capacity buildings of IPAs. And this is today, for example, is also one of the good examples of how we provide this. So we assist IPAs as well together with the partners, and we are trying to advise the respective governments, of course, on the importance of IPAs, especially in these difficult times. And I would just briefly say that we have a very strong steering committee from 14 different regions of the world, and we have an extremely strong consultative committee like a World Bank, OECD, all UN agencies, International Chamber of Commerce. So through these partners, we try to make access to technical assistance as well, of course, advocacy, especially advocacy. What we learned is through our surveys is that there are many, let's say, of course, difficulties that IPAs are facing because their governments are in trouble. So through this, we are trying to assist them and to advocate in their behalf, to show to their governments how important they are. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So we try to be a global reference point for FDI as a unique umbrella organization of IPAs. We frequently publish papers and research results on our website. You can see it, of course, under the WAIPA publications. Just to mention a couple of them, we did with the World Bank the global IPA survey. We did a COVID survey, so particularly on the how the IPAs reacted to the COVID negative impact. I mentioned before this administrative threat that some of them are under trouble. We are doing, for example, we have an FDI overview section so that you can see, for example, all these results that come from surveys in an interaction platform dashboard that you can see the trends. And of course, all the partners that I mentioned before are as well providing different kind of information. And we always try to link IPAs to the outer partners. And for example, one of our, of course, partners is GIZ as well. And we do appreciate really this cooperation. And of course, all these things what we are providing in our webpage is, of course, for practitioners with interactive tools that they can see what is the current situation and trends. And to support IPAs, when the COVID was there, we created as well a COVID platform where IPAs were able to share their views on the situation, their challenges and their solutions especially, so the best practices. We as well did a lot of interviews with the heads of IPAs that they were able to share to their peer colleagues what are they doing, how they are helping to their governments, and especially how they are helping to their investors. So WAIPA serves as a, let's say, central point, as I say, global reference point, as our slogan says, for FDI. So please feel free to visit our webpage, contact us as well after this webinar, whatever needed. I'm sure together with GIZ and together with the Bjorn, who was creating this toolbox, we will be able to assist you and to help you be even more productive and even more valuable to your respective governments and of course to your clients, which are investors. So I would stop here, not to be too long, and I would hand over the word to Stefan. So Stefan, please, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bosjan. Thank you, Ismail, for the kind introduction as well. And welcome all the participants who are joining us today. So already 160 joining us at the moment. So thank you for spending an hour with us for us to talk to you about the Investment Promotion Agency Toolbox that we have been developing. I'll say a couple of words first about what GIZ is, for those who don't know. GIZ, many of you might know, but some might not. GIZ is what's called a public benefit federal enterprise. So really, it's an organization owned by the German government. We implement technical assistance projects all across the world, as you can see, in more than in about 120 countries. We have more than 1,600 ongoing projects, and they can be anything from cooperation in health, education, or what we're talking about here, which is, of course, economic development and development of the private sector. Our main funder is the German government, but we do receive funding for specific projects as well from other donors, such as the European Commission. We can go to the next slide, where I will just sort of briefly show you that was sort of the macro picture of what GIZ is, just as a sort of a quick introduction. In terms of the specific topic that we're talking about here, which is the cooperation with investment promotion agencies, you can see on the map the countries where we currently work and cooperate with investment promotion agencies. So you can see it's really all across the world, but quite a bit of a focus on Africa, a little bit on Eastern Europe, then some cooperation in Asia with Mongolia, where it's about setting up a new investment promotion agency, as well as the Caribbean. The type of cooperation that we have in place in these specific or in these different countries depends. It very much depends on the needs of the country, the needs of the investment promotion agency, and what we agree to sort of cooperate on. I set out here some examples that you can see. So, for example, in Ghana, we're helping. That's a new cooperation that's starting, where we're helping to strengthen the business development division, where it's all about what the Ghanaian IPA wants to do is develop projects investment ready, so they can almost hand them over to investors. That's something that we're cooperating on with the Ghanaian authorities, while setting up customer relationship management. In Moldova, it's all about sort of training staff, as well as setting up a linkages platform which links foreign investors with small and medium enterprises in the country to ensure a little bit of technology transfer and those sort of additional benefits that one would like to reap from an international investor. It's also about setting up a regional, so subnational investment promotion agency. As many of you know, in most countries, there isn't just one national investment promotion agencies. There are also quite a few subnational ones, and sometimes the cooperation we have in place is indeed for those subnational ones. In Tunisia as well, it's similar to Moldova in that it's very broad, the cooperation that we have. It cuts across a lot of different areas: preparation of manuals, monitoring and evaluation systems for investments, identifying the right target sectors, really critical. What are the sectors that you actually want to attract investors into? Develop partnerships with German investment agencies. And of course, in the context of COVID, all the cooperation changed somewhat, and often there was quite a focus on more aftercare rather than investment promotion, business continuity management rather than big marketing and trade fairs and those sort of events. And that, of course, was then also reflected in the type of cooperation that we have in place with those investment promotion agencies. On my last slide, I'll just talk to you briefly about how investment promotion agencies can collaborate with us. I'm showing that because that question always comes up. So I know if I don't address it now, the question will come up later. So I might as well, address it now. So for those investment promotion agencies who are sort of listening to us, of course, there will be other participants as well who this might not be quite as relevant for. In the countries that I've listed on the map, your IPA should already be in contact with us, and we should have already an ongoing project. If your country wasn't shown there, then I would suggest you go on our website, which you have the link here. What we'll do at the end is we will upload all of these slides here to the software, so you can download it at the end of this webinar, and you can click on the links as well, where you can then get more information. So you can have a look at the GIZ website. You can look for each country. You can see the type of projects that are active there. And if there's a project active in the area of economic development, read through it, have a look. If you think that makes sense, that is active, that a project is active in an area that you work on as well, then just contact the person who is listed on the website for that particular project. Also, there is an option to partner with, of course, German associations where we have, in some of them, GIZ seconded personnel. So one scheme is called EZ Scouts, where we have in associations based in Germany. So for example, the Federation of German Food and Drinks Industries or the German Recycling Technology and Waste Management Partnership, those sort of specific industry sector specific associations based in Germany. If you want to sort of, partner with them, see if there are particular potential investors there, then just click on that link and see who you can contact there. The similar sort of system we have in place for the German Chambers of Commerce abroad, as well as in those countries where there is no German Chamber of Commerce abroad, we have a system called Business and Cooperation Desks. These are also GIZ seconded personnel who can help you. So have a look at those links as well after this webinar. And finally, I close with one additional potential source of support, which is called the Investment Climate Reform Facility. If you are from an ACP country, so Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, and you need sort of short-term support, so what we're talking is sort of up to 90 expert days of a consultant helping you to sort out a specific issue, then that facility might be the right one for you. Have a look at the link. If you think that's right for you, then you can submit a request. And if that request is approved, you would get that sort of short-term support. But with that, I will close it and I will hand over to Björn Vogler, who has developed the IPA Toolbox for us. I showed you all the areas where we're already working with investment promotion agencies. And the idea really was to help our projects on the ground with some knowledge management tool to enable them to do their work better, so they don't need to start from scratch when they're starting a cooperation with an investment promotion agency. But we thought we might as well then make it broader, more appealing to other international organizations as well who might be able to use it, because if we're putting in all the effort to develop it, we might as well make it widely available, as well as for investment promotion agencies themselves. So we have commissioned this toolbox, and Björn Vogler was the consultant who's basically done all the work, and he's done an excellent, really, piece of work here. So we're very grateful for that. And so I would like to hand over to Björn to tell us a little bit more about the IPA Toolbox. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce the toolbox and to present how it can be used. Big thank you also to all the experts, IPAs, and international partners that have contributed to the toolbox. So it has been truly a joint effort. Steffen, Bastian, and Ismail have already explained kind of the background, the objective behind it. So I would like to start off with some introductory remark on the approach that we followed. So right from the beginning, the idea was to develop the toolbox based on an integrated approach. What does it mean? What does it entail? So the toolbox is reflecting both the perspectives and needs of IPAs and international partners. And the main focus is on how can we actually maximize the benefits of cooperation projects. It covers not only the main tasks of IPAs, but also the organizational and financing dimension. So considering international experience both in developed and developing countries, the alignment of the different dimension constitutes a key success factor that is addressed throughout the toolbox. So for instance, if you try to introduce a target group oriented approach without anchoring it in the organizational structure and processes, it might be quite challenging. Same applies to for instance, a focus on SDGs. Furthermore, the toolbox is not looking at IPAs in isolation, but is also considering synergies, interrelations within the institutional and policy framework. So IPAs form part of a broad landscape of institutions that are operating, interacting in the area of investment attraction. So cross-organizational cooperation and coordination is another key success factor that is addressed throughout the toolbox. And finally, this integrated approach relates to building upon existing tools and good practices. So we want to avoid that colleagues have to start from scratch, but rather provide an overview what kind of tools are already existing. Of course, it can't be complete, but it should be a starting point for further research. So let's have a glance into the structure of the toolbox. The toolbox comprises 7 modules, and hopefully you can recognize this integrated approach. So the modules A to Z are going to cover the core tasks: investment attraction, investment promotion, investment facilitation, aftercare, and advocacy. Module D looks at how to define and refine target groups for investment attraction efforts. The target group focus plays not only a critical role for the strategy and operations of an IPA, but also for the calibration of the, let's say, entire investment policy package. So it's very important beyond the work of IPAs. Module E integrates the organizational and financing perspective. So assessing how to align the organizational and financing model to the core task and target groups. Module F then widens the perspective and looks at opportunities for cooperations with partners, looks at the organization, cross-organizational perspective in this context. So how can we build up a professional partner relationship management, for instance? And the concluding module G looks at how to design monitoring system, once again, not in isolation, but reflecting the strategic framework, the key objectives, tasks, and processes. So that's the idea of it. Now, unfortunately, today's presentation seems to be rather static. The good news is that the toolbox itself is an interactive online document. So it considers your daily workload and allows for selective reading. So for instance, here you could click directly on the different modules, go into the relevant sections, go back to the overview, and so on. All right, let's move on. And before looking in closer detail at the modules and the key elements, we would be very interested in your perspective. So if you don't mind, it would be great if you could complete one poll here. This poll is looking at in what areas does your IPA currently cooperate with international partners such as WAIPA, GIZ, UNIDO, and so on. So let's take some 30 seconds to complete this poll. Multiple answers are of course possible, and we will share the results at the end of the session in the panel session. Okay, I think we can move on. Thank you very much for completing this poll. There's going to be a second one later on. So, what are you going to find in the different modules? So they all have a similar structure, and each module starts with an introduction outlining the relevance of the topic for the success of an IPA, and it points out recent changes in the investment environment, emerging trends that are affecting IPA's strategies and operations. So for instance, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic constitutes an example here that is affecting most of the tasks and processes of an IPA. Furthermore, you will find guiding questions that will be addressed throughout the module, and you will find an overview of interrelations with other modules. So for instance, in the introduction to the monitoring module, it will be highlighted that it's important to align the monitoring system to the organizational dimension, to the core processes. And once again, the core processes should be aligned to the core tasks. So those types of interrelations are pointed out. And of course, in an interactive document, it's going to be much easier just to go to the links, look at the relevant modules and sections as needed. Going on to the next slide, the main part of each module describes in detail key steps for designing relevant measures and structures. So here you can see, for instance, an overview of the key steps for developing a structured aftercare program. And I strongly believe in a structured approach to aftercare, offering promising potentials for IPAs well beyond the current crisis, which hopefully is going to be over quite soon. So the toolbox looks at the different steps, starting from understanding the investor landscape, how to assess structural characteristics of the investor community, how to identify strategic partners you could integrate, clarifying objective. We take a closer look at the issue of segmentation and selection, as most IPAs do not have the resources to service all existing investors with an equal level of attention. So there's some kind of need for segmentation, prioritization. We look at how to design aftercare services, what kind of services could form part of the portfolio, how can they be communicated. We look at the organizational integration, what type of options exist, under which conditions does, for instance, a key account system make sense. Assessing resources forms part of the key steps, and developing the necessary tools. Once again, in the interactive version, you can kind of click directly on each step, move to the relevant step and further information on it, move between the different steps and go back to this overview. So it should be easy to navigate and easy to use. Furthermore, you will find in the main section commonly used tools and methodologies. For instance, in the section on aftercare, you will find a selection grid for aftercare clients based on international experience. So what kind of criteria could you use to select or prioritize existing investors for your aftercare program? It could be criteria, of course, like size, but you could also look at the forward and then backward linkage potential, risk of relocation. Some IPAs even look at the role of the company as an opinion leader in the country. So of course you are invited to amend this list, to change the weighting according to your needs. Furthermore, taking into account that there's no one-size-fits-all solutions, different options are presented in the toolbox. For instance, you will find different organizational models used by IPAs, and some guidance how to develop and design your own model, adhering to consistent organizational principles and ensuring a clear allocation of roles and responsibilities. All right, let's move on. And each module concludes with providing hands-on tips for how to design future cooperation projects. Main focus is on sketching out ideas reflecting the mentioned integrated approach, so paying attention to synergies between different tasks and different processes. So you will find, for instance, a mentoring program that is looking at the interface between different tasks carried out by investment promotion agency. You will find hands-on tips on how to structure a workshop to develop organizational design principle. The toolbox is also looking at options of how to tap the potential of the networks of international partners. So how can they link you up with relevant intermediaries in their home country? How can they support you in reaching out to headquarters of investors that have a presence in your countries? So questions like that are covered here. Of course, the toolbox also looks at challenges and limitations. For instance, how to avoid overloading the service portfolio of an IPA or the monitoring system of an IPA. All right, so before going on, I would like to ask you to complete a second poll, if you don't mind. This poll is looking at the number of international partners your IPA is currently cooperating with. So I've seen quite some variation in this respect in the interviews carried out as part of the research for the toolbox. So hence it would be great if you can share your experience so that we have a more complete picture. So let's take some more seconds to complete the poll. And again, we will share the results at the end in the panel discussion. All right, thank you. Let's move on to illustrate the different approaches. A wide spectrum of practical examples has been included in the toolbox. So from developing countries, from developed countries, from transition countries, so to provide you with a good overview of different ideas, illustrating the approaches, the different steps, tools, and methodologies. So, for instance, you will find a practical example on how to pilot targeted investment promotion from Namibia. We will also take a closer look at the aftercare program and the PPP model of the IPA of the federal state of Berlin in Germany, and tools to support the reorganization of IPAs will be illustrated by an example from Moldova. Furthermore, you will find a range of examples that have been implemented in several countries. So, for instance, investment councils established with the support by EBRD, or UNIDO subcontracting and partnership exchanges that focus on linkage promotion, promoting linkages between foreign investors and local suppliers. So it's quite a range of different examples integrated in the modules. All right, next slide, please. Furthermore, in each module, you will find the what works versus what does not work table, summarizing key success factors at the end. So, for instance, when we talk about designing monitoring systems, it's highlighted that the strategic framework of an IPA should form the point of departure for the design process, as we all, I think, tend to dive directly into the discussion of key performance indicators, IPAs, international partners, and also consultants. But it's really important to have a consensus first on really what's worth tracking before one goes ahead. Another point covered in here is that monitoring systems are not only supposed to measure the efficiency of IPAs, but they should be efficient themselves. So for me, it was quite interesting to see that IPAs in OECD countries tend to have much less KPIs compared to their counterparts in developing countries. There are different reasons that could be behind it, but it should be an aspect that one should consider in designing future cooperation projects. So let's move on to the last glance. Next slide, please. Perfect. Into the toolbox. So at the end of the different modules, you will always find lists of further sources of information on tools and approaches. I've mentioned at the beginning that, of course, it can't be complete. That's not realistic. Constantly new tools are arising, but it should be a starting point, yeah, for further research and to provide you with a good idea on what's already there or where to look for further information. So you will find here an overview of relevant trainings that are already available. You will find information on recent studies, policy notes, surveys by OECD, World Bank, UNCTAD, and so on for the specific topic under consideration. We point out initiatives by regional networks of investment promotion agencies, such as here the Anima Investment Network initiatives you might be interested to join in, or which could provide you with some further information. We have also integrated here links to IPAs that publish helpful information from our point of view, like publishing their KPIs, publishing their strategic plans, which sometimes can be quite helpful to take a look at. Well, I hope this kind of really quick overview of the toolbox and quick glance into it has provided you with a first impression of how one can use it, and has created some interest in the toolbox. So the toolbox is by intention a living digital only document, and of course we are interested in your feedback and your further ideas. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope it's going to be helpful for your work, and we all look forward to your feedback. And with those words, I hand over to Ismail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Björn, for this excellent presentation. Actually, all we have been saying that IPAs do need some work that can be implemented to their daily life. And this is a fantastic study that can be very well implemented to their daily life. Actually, this can be very well utilized by the IPAs. And this has been asked for since very long time. And I would like to thank you again for working on this precious study. And I'm going to slowly switch to the Q&A session and the discussion debate session. Actually, please don't hesitate to send your questions under the chat box function. I would like to remind you again, before switching to the Q&A session, let's take the polls results of the polls. I would like to request from Sokvalin. Thank you very much, Sokvalin, for sharing those. And the question was, in what areas does your IPA currently cooperate with international partners? Apparently, the most popular one is investment promotion and facilitation measures with 88%. And the second goes for aftercare and advocacy with 33%. Defining and reviewing target groups with 28%. Designing, refining the organizational and financing model is 25%. And finally, monitoring with 15%. Let's look at the second one, please. And with how many international partners does your IPA currently cooperating? Well, the first is currently no cooperation with international partners with 29%. And we hope this presentations and this webinar is going to be helping them to start cooperating. And of course, the biggest majority is with 38% is 2 to 4 partners. 20 of them are partnering with 5 or more partners, and 14 of them are partnering with 1 partner only. I will ask all the audience and all the speakers and presenters, of course, to go evaluate, of course, these results as well before answering the questions that I'm going to raise to them. And I'm going to go for the first question to Björn after thanking to you again. Björn, how did COVID-19 impacted the development of the toolbox? Can you please a little bit evaluate on that? And to all the panelists as well, how do you generally believe is the most important impact of COVID-19 on the work of IPAs? Björn, could you please start? Maybe you can also evaluate on the poll results. Later on, you can switch to the questions, and later the other presenters can take over for the second part of the question.
All right. Thank you very much. I mean, first of all, also thank you very much to the audience for completing the polls. That's really interesting results from my side. I think in a way, when we start with the question, kind of in what areas do you cooperate with? I think here I would emphasize really the need for this integrated approach in the future. We have seen that most of the cooperation takes place in the area of investment promotion and facilitation. I think aftercare has probably increased recently. But I think if one really wants to increase the effectiveness of an IPA, it's important that one is also looking at the target group focus, and in particular at the organizational and financing model as kind of, if you want to intensify your target group promotion efforts, it's not enough kind of to support, let's say a brochure or do some trainings, but really to ensure that it's anchored in the organization and reflected by the target group focus. So I think there is potential for future cooperation. I think interesting results also with respect to the number of partners. We have seen quite some variation, and I mean, of course, the last group, it's not clear with how many partners they cooperate in the maximum. I think the maximum I've seen in research for the study was 17, and I was really really impressed. So I think there is, in a way, there's potential and a challenge in it. The potential is really in coordinating the activities of the different partners to really ensure that it's aligned to each other, and that you do not have one partner focusing on, I don't know, aftercare in one corner and the other one is looking at promotional issues, but really to integrate that. And when we look into the future, kind of at issues like kind of to have a more value chain based or cluster based investment attraction approach, it's going to be even more important that you integrate partners that are working on supplier development or upgrading the supplier skills base, really to have an effective package. So I think both, first of all, both audience polls have brought in some good ideas for further cooperation projects. Maybe another comment on your question on with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, it had a strong impact on the toolbox, and it is reflected in the toolbox as the pandemic has really affected nearly all tasks and processes of an IPA. But, and I think that's important, the scope and focus of the toolbox goes well beyond the current pandemic, which hopefully is going to be over. So the idea is to yes, of course, to show how has the pandemic affected aftercare activities, but how can we take a structured approach that is important well beyond the crisis. We're looking at kind of how to review and refine the target groups, which of course is important as the pandemic is really changing investment patterns or is accelerating changes. So that's covered. But the idea is to illustrate how should in principle a target group analysis and a review carried out. And if it's now during the pandemic, the recovery process or beyond, I think there's always a need to regularly update that. So it's covered, but the scope goes well beyond, and it should be useful still in 3, 4, 5 years time. But please, I'm interested in your points and also regarding the audience polls. Thank you.
Stefan, would you like to evaluate on that as well? Especially the second part of the question, please.
Yeah. Okay, I was just going to go to the first part, which is
okay, go ahead, please.
But I can comment on the second part as well, because what I found interesting is that, again, there's relatively little focus on aftercare, which is interesting. It's always, you know, the investment promotion, the big trade fairs and all that. And we know that from the studies as well. When you look at the budgets of IPAs, they tend to be geared towards investment promotion, investment facilitation, very little on aftercare, let alone monitoring. And I think what we've learned from the pandemic is how important aftercare is, looking after the investors who are currently in your country, not at the moment, you know, focusing too much about getting new investors in, actually focus on the ones who are currently there, make sure that they're not leaving, make sure you can work with them around business continuity, etc. So it's interesting to see that there's still very little cooperation in that area. So I found that striking. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Bojan, would you like to comment on that as well?
I would say I agree with both of the colleagues, especially aftercare is becoming more and more important. And I would like to say that this toolbox would really most possibly give to the IPAs some certain freedom to explore beyond the COVID. Nevertheless, the COVID is impacting negatively, but I believe the important thing is to prepare ourselves how we will work after the COVID, or at least when the COVID is fading away. And I believe what we also proved in our surveys is IPAs will become more and more important. And of course, they were negatively impacted because their governments were spending a lot of budgets for some subventions and to mitigate the negative impact on the economy. But nevertheless, I guess the tool comes in the right time to get ready if there are some skills missing, and to prepare ourselves to be more lean organization, to focus on, let's say, different sectors, prepare I would say a bit different KPIs, revisit the strategies, maybe work on the talent search to get us ready for the future after the pandemic.
Exactly. I mean, I cannot agree more with your comments, actually. I mean, I have been saying this before. I would like to repeat again. IPAs, investment promotion agencies, are not just there to promote. They are there to aftercare, to facilitate, and to provide advocacy services as well, more importantly, maybe. Therefore, I do believe that there are much to learn in this toolkit for all of our IPA colleagues. And I have been receiving questions on how to access to that. We are going to launch it. Please be patient. In the end of this session, we are going to share it through our chat box, and Stefan is going to launch it officially. So I would like to thank you again for your patience. I'm going to continue with the questions because I have many questions. I am trying to somehow cluster them. I'm sorry if I cannot cover all of these questions, but I will continue with the next one, actually, if I may. Well, we have seen in the polls again that, well, there's a 29% of the participants, they haven't cooperated with international partners. I mean, maybe to Stefan and to Boštjan first, how do you see that? Where do you see the benefit of cooperation between the IPAs and international organizations? What are the key factors making the cooperation between IPAs and international partners a success? How would you evaluate on that, especially addressing to those that have answered that they don't have any partnership with international organizations? That form 30% of the audience, by the way.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting that either there's no cooperation or there's cooperation with lots of different partners. There's barely anyone just sort of cooperating with one international organization. It's either all or nothing, which is interesting. I'm not quite sure where that comes from. We as GIZ, of course, have a very specific mandate, and we're only operating in a certain number of countries. And of course, there are lots of countries where we don't cooperate in, and I think the same probably applies to other international organizations as well. So that might be the reason why there's a relatively high number of IPAs who are not cooperating with any international organizations. What I would say in terms of key success factors, in particular, given how many partners IPAs tend to cooperate with, looking at the 2 to 4 or even 5 or more partners, is that as a key success factor, your second question is, you know, that we're all very clear who is doing what, so we're not duplicating each other's work, and then, you know, this one organization comes in doing that, and then another one comes in doing the same thing. So I think it's very, when you start a cooperation, really important to be very transparent. Who are we currently cooperating with? Is there a particular niche that you as an international organization still needs to fill because others aren't filling it, etc. But be very transparent with what others are doing. I think that's the most sort of helpful part. I think what helps as well is sort of course, personal relationships, and of course, COVID is making all of this very difficult. But for us as GIZ, that's very important, which is why we have quite a number of staff in the countries where we cooperate in, rather than sort of fly in and fly out. That, you know, we do believe that, you know, you do need to have those sort of personal connections and relationships, and I think that can help, alongside being very clear what are others doing, how you can cooperate, and understanding the needs of each other. International organizations often have a need for data, you know, to understand what is the impact of their interventions, etc. Sometimes that is more difficult for our partners to sort of understand, appreciate, because it's a lot of hassle to collect all of this data. But that's the sort of thing where we just need to understand each other's needs and where we're coming from, so that we can sort of make sure we can sort of build a sort of mutual beneficial relationship.
Thank you, Stefan. Boštjan?
Yes, can't agree more, Stefan, about the duplication. Whoever knows me personally, I'm always advocating on the sharing actually the services. And as we as WAIPA, pretty much I would say independent international NGO, we are always trying to connect all big institutions to try not to, I would say, go parallel and have different services, but trying to connect the dots and bring the best out of it for the benefit of IPAs. And I would say that now, when the times are difficult, more than ever, we need cooperation and focus on the, I would say, sustainability as well. And then, how shall I put it? We should work hand in hand, and we see already regional cooperations. And for example, even our steering committee is extensively working on the regional initiatives, putting together the regional IPAs to share their views, their challenges, and how they can together work to help better to the investors and to serve them better and to mitigate the risk that they are facing during the pandemics. And as many IPAs are superheroes and having many mandates, obviously they are also having it too many cooperations time to time. So I guess this revisiting strategies also means to check on which sectors now we will focus, what KPIs we will prioritize, what sectors we will prioritize, and then as well maybe how we will cluster the partners together that they can help us with the different points of view and different aspects to that we get the best out of it, and then we serve to our purpose. Thank you.
I will just give a small example of WAIPA as an NGO. Imagine several years ago, with no partnership with the consultative committee members, we were barely organizing 3 to 5 events in a year. Now it's over 40, I guess, right, Wojciech? I think it's also a good example. You are as strong as your partners. This is what I also do believe. Star of today is Björn. Björn, we didn't forget you. The questions are coming up for you too, of course. The next question is for Björn. How did you take the quality of investments? Actually, we mean the investments helping to achieve SDGs into account for the toolbox, or how should IPAs more generally take this into account?
All right. Thank you very much for the question, and don't worry, I'm not feeling neglected. It just has been a team effort, and should be a team effort. Now first of all, the intention of the toolbox is not only to enhance the quantity of investment projects, but also the quality and impact. Yes, I think we can all recognize that IPAs focus much more strongly on qualitative issues in the recent past. So yes, it is a topic, and we have integrated it for instance in the module on defining and refining target groups. So we have a separate dimension focusing on the development impact. So, because I think once again, this integrated approach is important, that one is not just introducing a focus on SDGs via the monitoring system. I think we have seen that in the beginning, but you really have to start with a strategic and target group focus and integrated it here. So there are some ideas in the toolbox, as well as we are referring to good examples, initiatives that are around by networks of investment promotion agencies. But also talking about the integrated approach, it's important that here we have those interrelations in the policy framework. So it's important not just to look at investment promotion, it's also a question of how to redesign incentives, for instance. And we've seen interesting examples of countries that are integrating SDGs into selection and eligibility criteria for incentives. So I think here, once again, it's going to be important to have this integrated approach, look at the right dimensions of that should be involved, and then also actually even go beyond the scope of the toolbox and look at further policy tools. But for sure, it's an important topic. It's increasing in importance, and one can see it in the strategies and operations of IPAs around the globe.
I think this toolbox can be implemented by subnational IPAs as well, right? There's no distinction between subnational IPAs or national IPAs. Is it correct?
It's correct. I mean, I would say the approaches in principle are of relevance for IPAs at all levels. Of course, when you're going into the details, there are some differences with respect to kind of what kind of service portfolio is realistic at the subnational level, and kind of what organizational structure is relevant. But I think for all those, the key principles, the key tools are of relevance. And the idea of the toolbox is, in a way, not to be prescriptive or to say this is the only solution, but more to kind of to show alternatives and to show different organizational models, how you can divide it up, so it should be useful for any type of IPAs.
I mean, there are also questions regarding the interactive nature of the toolbox. I mean, can you a little bit elaborate on that as well? I mean, can Toolbox help IPAs of one country to communicate with another country's IPA for investment? I mean, how do you see that? I mean, would it help them to work it out more interactively, maybe?
If I get you right, so we're looking now at the more regional dimension of
exactly.
Yes, for sure. And I think that aspect is increasing in importance as we have now this trend that companies are going to look at reshaping their value chain. They are going to look at the regional dimension in a different way. So I think it makes quite a bit of sense to kind of join forces, intensify cooperation at the regional level, as also typically investors start their location search at the regional level. So it makes sense here really to intensify cooperation. And we have integrated this perspective also when we're looking at the cross-organizational perspective, because the idea was really of the toolbox, not just to look at kind of how do you structure your IPA and to shift boxes in the organigram, but really say, okay, there's another organizational dimension, the cross-organizational one, and this kind of takes place in your country, it takes place at the region, and let's say beyond the region at the international level, so to find a professional partner relationship management.
Thank you very much, Björn. Stefan, we are going to slowly wrap up. Actually, do you have any final words, and Boštjan as well, that we can slowly wrap up, and then we can finally launch the toolbox as let's say the participants, attendees are being excited to receive it, maybe. Maybe final words from you?
Okay, yeah, no, well, thank you very much, first of all, for organizing the webinar with us. I think this has been a great collaboration between WAIPA and GIZ, and of course, Björn Vogler. I have the link ready to go, so as soon as you tell me, I'll click on it, and then everyone can...
Please go ahead, let's not wait anymore.
Okay, so I'll do that now, so you should all have received the link, so you can have a look. Maybe in 3 minutes, not now, in 3 minutes, have a look at the link in the toolbox and play around with it. So thank you very much for your attention.
Boštjan?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I fully agree, especially with Björn, that we should follow the integrated approach. And I would encourage every IPA that was here or anyone who would like to really check this toolbox and use it in their own way. So as Björn said, it's not one size fits all, but this will be a great, I would say, guideline how you can improve ourselves. I mean, how we can improve ourselves, what we can do different to be even more effective, especially for clients, investors, and on the other hand, advocating back to governments to navigate through the difficult times and prepare our work for the future. So with this, I would like to thank again, of course, to GIZ, to Björn as well, to you, Ismail, as well as and a great, I would say, fruitful moderation, and as well to all participants. And please go ahead and click to the link later on. And if you need us later, any one of us here, just go ahead and ask us. I mean, we will assist you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much again to all the presenters and to all the attendees as well for participating. I know that you're asking for the video. The video will be available on WAIPA's website, and the presentation is going to be available as well as of course the IPA Toolbox. That the link has just recently been shared and launched by Stefan. Anytime you have any questions, you can reach out to us. Please feel free to come out with your questions either to us or to Stefan and Björn or Boštjan. We will be happy to assist you at any time. As you know, WAIPA is here to assist you for during challenges times, as well as GIZ has been an excellent partner for us, and we are thankful for them for doing this excellent study and launching together the IPA Toolbox with us. I would like to thank, of course, to all the attendees, all IPA colleagues over there, and we are going to finalize with the satisfaction survey before we close. Of course, I feel like let's say you are, most of you, or the majority is going towards clicking on the very useful button. I do hope so, and we are going to receive good results in that, and we look forward to working with you all together. Please, as I said, click on the satisfaction survey before you leave, and let's hope for a better day, better tomorrow. So let's cooperate more, and we are here to assist at any time. Just reach out to us, and have a very nice day. Keep well.